everyone. Welcome back to the deep dive. You know the drill, right? We take these super interesting, kind of brain-bending topics and really unpack them. No fluff, just pure fascinating stuff. And today, buckle up. We're going way back to 14th century Myanmar. We're talking the Razadarit Ayedawbon.
Yeah, it's a chronicle. Well, think of it like this. Direct access to King Razadarit's reign in the Hanthawadi Pigu kingdom. And let me tell you, this was not a quiet time.
Yeah.
They were trying to unify all these Mon-speaking regions while also dealing with a pretty aggressive neighbor up north, the Ava kingdom.
Right, so there's a lot of tension already baked into this whole story. Like, you can practically feel it just reading this chronicle. But what's so cool about this particular source, the Razadarit Ayedawbon, is it doesn't just give you the dry historical facts.
It really gets into the nitty-gritty of how power worked. Like, who was vying for the king's favor, what crazy schemes they were cooking up, the battles. Oh, and let's not forget the palace intrigue.
Okay, so I'm already hooked. Generals mysteriously disappearing, rumors swirling about the royal family. It's giving Game of Thrones vibes, but, historically accurate.
I can see that. But for today's deep dive, we're going super micro. We're zooming in on one specific event that's equal parts baffling and kind of juicy. It involves Lagunein, who was one of Razadarit's top warriors, Queen Talithutamaya, and of course the king himself.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading this passage. Lagunein, he's this respected warrior, right? The queen gives him a gift, a really symbolic one, as a sign of the king's favor. But then, out of nowhere, Lagunein basically claims he's paralyzed. Like,
It makes absolutely no sense at first glance, and what makes it even weirder is how Razadarit reacts. It's completely unexpected, almost unbelievable, which is why we're here. We want to figure out what on earth was going on beneath the surface.
and to do that, we're bringing in some heavy hitters of psychology, Lacan, Freud, and Žižek. These guys were masters at unpacking the hidden meanings behind human behavior.
Exactly. We're going to use their ideas as lenses to kind of dissect this historical mystery. Because trust me, this is way more than just a weird anecdote. It tells us a lot about power, desire, and how people navigated those tricky waters, even centuries ago.
Ready to go down this rabbit hole?
I am.
Awesome. Okay, so let's set the stage. It all starts with this big ceremony, right? Queen Talithutamaya, she's front and center. She wants to give Lagunein this boost of courage before a major campaign, so she presents him with betel.
This wasn't just, hey, have a snack. Betel nut. It held a ton of cultural significance. It was a symbol of royalty, loyalty, all that good stuff. So giving it to someone, especially a warrior like Lagunein, was a huge honor.
It basically meant the king was backing him, right? Like, go get him, tiger, we believe in you. Now, outwardly, Lagunein's all cool and collected. He accepts the gift with the proper respect and all. But then afterwards, something happens.
Yeah, he kind of has this mini meltdown in private. You can see his mind going into overdrive. He starts doubting the king's commitment, especially when he thinks about the enemy they're up against. Vasane. These guys, they had a serious naval advantage, and it kind of freaks Lagunein out.
He even says something like, and I'm paraphrasing here, Basane's got this huge river force, and we're seriously outnumbered. If I'm going to risk my life, I need to know the king actually has my back. It's like all this insecurity just comes bubbling up.
You hit the nail on the head. Publicly, he's all about duty and honor, but privately, there's this gnawing fear. It shows just how precarious things were, even for someone high up in the king's ranks. Like, you always had to be proving your worth.
And then things go completely sideways. Lagunein, he pulls this move where he pretends to be sick, like hides under a blanket, the whole 9 yards. But there are these two other commanders, Dainmaniut and Biatza, doing their usual rounds, and they notice something's off.
Yeah, Lagunein's supposed to be prepping for battle. The tide's coming in, everything's in motion, and he's nowhere to be found. They send a messenger to check on him, but Dainmaniut and Biatza, they're smart cookies, they're not buying it. So they decide to go to Lagunein's boat, his catamaran, themselves.
And what do they find? Lagunein's not sick at all. But when they confront him, he drops this totally bizarre confession. Get this. He claims he's been paralyzed, hasn't been able to eat or anything ever since he saw the queen's bodice loosen a little when she gave him the betel nut.
It's like, what? Seriously, this tough warrior, totally undone by this fleeting, probably unintentional glimpse of the queen. And then he throws out this super dramatic line. Since I must die, whether I go or stay, I have chosen to stay. It's almost like he wants to make a point.
It's like he's putting on a play, right? And to make it even more pointed, he specifically tells Dainmaniut and Biatza to tell the king exactly what he said, word for word. This wasn't just some private breakdown. This was a calculated move.
Absolutely. So you can imagine Dainmaniut and Biatza They're probably sweating bullets at this point. Like, how are we going to tell the king this crazy story? They finally work up the courage, report everything to Razadarit, and brace themselves for the fallout.
And here comes the twist. Razadarit, instead of freaking out or dismissing it all, he just calmly says, and I quote, "I can bear the loss of a queen, but I cannot bear to lose Lagunein." I mean, can you believe that? His warrior is worth more to him than his own wife.
It's mind-blowing. It completely upends the power structure. You'd expect a king to be furious about this perceived disrespect to the queen, but he does the exact opposite.
He actually orders the queen to go see Lagunein. She literally goes to his catamaran, and the chronicle mentions she's weeping, probably humiliated. To make it even more surreal, she's brought over in this super fancy golden canoe with a canopy and everything. Talk about a royal send-off.
It's a complete inversion of what you'd expect. The queen, the symbol of the king's power, is sent to appease a subordinate. It shows you just how much Razadarit valued Lagunein.
And Lagunein plays his part perfectly. He comes out of his catamaran, loaded with gifts, kneels before the queen as she approaches, even touches his forehead to the deck. It's a full-blown performance.
He basically says, okay, now I know how much the king really cares about me, and only then does he finally head off with his troops.
So we've got this weird psychodrama playing out just as a major military operation's about to kick off. What happens next?
Okay, so Lagunein sets off with his fleet. It's a decent force, but the Basane folks have way more ships. However, Razadarit, being the strategic mastermind that he was, had already set a trap. He'd planted all these stakes along the riverbed, leaving just these narrow, hidden channels for his own ships to pass through.
It's like he's playing 4D chess while everyone else is struggling with checkers. So Lagunein, he knows about this trap, right? He leads a smaller, faster part of his fleet towards Pampin, where the main enemy fleet, led by a guy named Lagunein, is hanging out.
And Lagunein, he's cocky. He sees this smaller force and thinks, easy win, let's go crush them. He totally falls for the bait and gives chase. Classic blunder.
They get to Dongpong Lulin, and bam, the trap is sprung. Those Basane ships, they have no clue about the hidden stakes. They get impaled left and right. The whole river turns into this chaotic mess of sinking ships. It's gotta be a horrifying sight.
Total carnage. Lagunein, he barely escapes with his own skin, and Lagunein mops up. He returns to Razadarit with all these captured ships, a total victory. And Razadarit, he's ecstatic. His plan worked perfectly.
So from this seemingly nonsensical breakdown to a huge military win, it's like something out of a movie.
It's a wild ride. But now comes the really fun part. Let's unpack all this with our psychology hats on.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, first up, Lacan. What do you think he'd make of Lagunein's whole paralyzed by the queen's bodice thing?
Right, so Lacan, he was all about the symbolic order. It's basically the framework of rules and meanings that we use to make sense of the world. Think language, social customs, all those unspoken agreements that make society tick.
Okay, I'm with you. So where does the bodice fit in?
To Lacan, that little wardrobe malfunction wasn't just a sexy moment. It was like a rip in the fabric of the symbolic order. It was this intrusion of something real, raw, and unfiltered, what he called the real. And Lagunein, he couldn't process it. It was like his brain short-circuited.
So it wasn't really about lusting after the queen.
Not in a straightforward way. It was deeper than that. It messed with his entire understanding of his place in the court, his relationship with the king, everything. It was existential, not just sexual. Remember his line, "Since I must die, whether I go or stay, I have chosen to stay." It's not about the queen. It's about his whole world suddenly feeling shaky.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. That's pretty profound. And what about Lacan's idea of the desire of the other?
Oh, that's super relevant here. Lagunein's meltdown wasn't about whether he personally desired the queen. It was about figuring out how the king, the big other, saw him. Did he matter? Was he valued? The queen became this object not of desire itself, but of Lagunein testing his worth in the king's eyes.
So like a pawn in this weird power game.
Exactly. And that extreme reaction, the paralysis and all, Lacan might call that jouissance. It's that intense, almost painful feeling you get when you bump up against the limits of the symbolic order. It's like, whoa, the rules just got broken and I don't know what to do.
And then there's Razadarit's crazy move, sending the queen to Lagunein. How does that fit into all this?
That's where it gets super Lacanian. The king basically bends the rules of the symbolic order to his will. Instead of punishing Lagunein for this supposed transgression, he allows it, even encourages it. It's like he's saying, I'm so powerful, I can rewrite reality.
And by doing so, he becomes the subject supposed to know, right? Like he dictates how everyone should interpret this bizarre event.
Boom, exactly. He takes control, reaffirms Lagunein's importance, and brings everything back under his command as a power move disguised as a concession.
Mind blown. Okay, let's shift gears. What would good old Freud have to say about all this?
Well, Freud, he loved a good Oedipus complex. He might look at this whole thing through the lens of repressed desires and childhood issues. He'd probably see the queen as this forbidden mother figure, someone who's nurturing but completely off limits because she's married to the king.
So Lagunein hiding under the blanket, that's not just him being dramatic.
To Freud, that could symbolize a regression to a childlike state, like he's overwhelmed by these forbidden desires and wants to retreat to a safe space. And that dramatic confession, it's the return of the repressed, those unconscious feelings bubbling up and manifesting in these physical symptoms and over-the-top pronouncements.
And that line about dying whether he goes or stays?
That's classic Freudian guilt.
Yeah.
The superego battling with those unconscious taboo urges. It's that conflict between what he wants and what he knows is wrong, playing out on a grand scale.
Okay, last question on Freud. The king sending the queen. What's that all about?
Freud might call that sublimation. It's this process where you take these primal, unacceptable urges and channel them into something more socially acceptable. The king allows Lagunein this symbolic interaction with the queen, kind of diffusing the tension, allowing him to go back to his duties guilt-free.
Okay, that's kind of brilliant, actually. Last but not least, we have Žižek. How do you think he'd interpret this whole mess?
Žižek. He takes Lacan's ideas and adds this sharp focus on ideology and power. He'd probably see this whole episode as a performance of power, a demonstration of what he calls ideological interpolation. Lagunein's not really obsessed with the queen. He's obsessed with being seen as the most important, the most favored by the king.
So it's all about seeking validation from the person in power.
Exactly. It's about reinforcing his place within the king's gaze, as Žižek would put it. And the queen, in this scenario, she becomes this surplus object of power. That glimpse of her bodice isn't just a personal moment. It's a crack in the facade of the system, a glimpse behind the curtain of how power actually works.
It's like, oh, so the rules aren't as absolute as we pretend they are.
Exactly. And Lagunein's reaction, his whole breakdown, that's him bumping up against what Žižek calls the obscene core of power. It's this realization that power isn't just about laws and titles. It's about these messy, often irrational human desires.
And Razadarit's line about valuing Lagunein over the queen.
Classic Žižek. He'd say that reveals the obscene underside of power. It's the king showing that he's not bound by the usual rules, that he can act in these seemingly transgressive ways to maintain control. The queen, she becomes collateral in this whole performance, sacrificed to reassert the king's power and secure Lagunein's loyalty.
So it's not just a personal drama, it's this whole political game played out in the most unexpected way.
Exactly. It shows how personal desire, power, and ideology get all tangled up.
It's pretty amazing, really. I mean, we started with this bizarre little story, and we ended up exploring all these different layers of meaning, thanks to these incredible thinkers.
That's the beauty of using these psychological lenses. It allows us to see history and even our own lives in a whole new light.
So, to wrap up our deep dive, we saw how this seemingly innocent gift of betel nut set off this whole chain reaction. Lagunein's paralysis, whether real or feigned, became this flashpoint, this test of loyalty and power dynamics. And through Lacan, Freud, and Žižek, we got these three different but equally fascinating takes on what was really going on beneath the surface.
I think the real takeaway is this. Even in historical context, things aren't always what they seem. Personal desires, power struggles, hidden motivations, they all intertwine in ways we might not expect. And this story really makes you think about the nature of power and loyalty. Like, how far would you go to prove your worth to someone in authority?
It's a question that resonates even today, right? I mean, think about all the ways we still navigate these complex dynamics in our own lives, our jobs, our relationships. It's like this ancient story holds up a mirror to our own human nature.
And that's what makes these deep dives so rewarding. We get to crack open these historical texts, explore these different interpretations, and come away with new insights that might even help us understand ourselves a little better.
I'm all about that. All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's deep dive. We hope you enjoyed this exploration of the Razadarit Ayedawbon as much as we did. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those brains buzzing.